All right. Well, hello everybody. Give me just a few minutes while I get everything else set up, and we will get started into the to the evening. There we go. All right. So I actually will go ahead and give you guys a little bit of information about our guest tonight, and I'm going to let him give his story and everything else that that he wants to share, and that he's got as part of his message to share. But I want to tell you, whenever I say that this guy had energy to spare at this event that we met at, and oddly enough, actually, I knew Jeremy on Facebook before we ever even connected in person. It just happened to be that he was speaking at the American Lending Conference. I was there as an attendee, and it was great. We actually got to connect and was like, "Wait, you look familiar." It was one of those. Well, you look familiar too. And then lo and behold, we're friends on Facebook. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Jeremy to the stage. Right now.
Hey man, can you hear me okay?
Yep. Got you, bud.
For some
So
reason I
we're
can't hear
live.
you. Hold on.
Yep. And this is the fun part about streaming live is that it's just unedited, raw. We just get into it, right? Um, he's working on his audio. It looks like. Let's see. You're muted right now, brother. No, can't hear you now. You still have your. There we go. It's okay. It's Monday, so we all get a pass on Mondays. All right, I can see he's mouthing his words, but can you hear me, Jeremy? All right, I see that you're unmuted. Do a little.
Can you hear me? There
I
we
can
go.
hear you. Yep. You can hear
Finally.
me.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right.
Sorry
you're
about
good.
all that
No, you're fine,
technology.
man. No, you're good. We're live, so I was telling people, hey, look, this is what happens when you go live. It's cool.
Yeah, especially with me and technology, man.
Well, I was just telling people that obviously we had known each other on Facebook by proxy. We actually met back at the ALC, the American Lending Conference, in September. And
Yep.
you took the stage. You had just abundant energy, and since then, I was a guest on your podcast, and you're doing me the favor of coming on tonight to share your story and everything else. So just to really get in there, and while we're waiting for other people to kind of kick in and let the stream start doing its thing and get the reach out, why don't you share, your story about how you started? It was in 2017, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my journey really started during the Great Recession back in 2009, 2010. That was actually my first off market deal. That's a story for a different day. But I was the motivated seller, not the house buyer at that time. But that real estate investor, definitely, gave me a reset button in life, which a lot of real estate investors do when they're working with, direct sellers, because, let's face it, we're all one or two life events or one or two life decisions away from being in a tough spot where we may need help. And that was me with the Great Recession. But, I built myself back out of that. I ended up, after that time going into the military, 33 years old, did some, soul searching and self-reflection and started to rebuild myself and got, came back out of the military, ended up getting divorced. And then, I just was approaching like 40 years old. And, and as we start to age, we start to see people that we know that are working in corporate America, and they start to become expendable later in life, the 40s and 50 years old, working careers for these people that are just let go. And that scared me. And after being in rock bottom, not only in my 30s, but, as a child as well, I just was worried about being in a situation where, like, all right, I'm in my 40s, my kids are getting older, I'm making okay money, but I'm still like living month to month, paycheck to paycheck. What happens if, the owner of my company decides to sell or goes out of business or something happens again? What do I do? Because I don't have a high school education. I don't have a college education. So anyway, I decided I wanted to go into real estate. It was what I really tried to do before the recession, until the recession hurt me. And I was listening to this podcast, and many podcasts, but this one podcast came along, and it was this guy named Tom Kroll. And if you guys don't know who Tom Kroll is, he created Wholesaling Inc. And he's like, bam, ding, 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 ding. And he's just really charismatic and had this great energy. And I was like, who is this guy? This guy's awesome. And, back in 2016, I didn't realize that you could use other people's money to flip houses or to buy rentals. I just knew that I wanted to own rental property someday because, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like most people. And I said, that's what I want. So I thought, well, man, if I can get into wholesaling, then I could learn how to start getting properties at the lowest level, right? Which is just getting directly for the seller. I'll wholesale, make some cash, and then eventually I'll earn enough money I can start buying them for myself. At least that was the thought process. So wanted to join Tom Kroll's Wholesale Inc. Coaching program, but it was $5,000, and then I needed some money to start the business. I didn't have that. I was, making six figures, and it sounds funny that I didn't have like 10, 11K making six figures, but I didn't. I had child support. I was just kind of living, month to month. And that's when I took the bold move. I said, I'm going to make this happen. So I had some equity in the townhouse that I bought a couple years earlier. I decided to sell my townhouse. I made like 17K off of that, the sale of that house. 6 of it went into credit card debt, and 5 went into the coaching program. $6,000 was like starting my LLCs, getting my contracts with my attorney set up, and really my initial marketing expense. So that $11,000, is what started my business. I joined his program in October of 2016. I just turned 40, moved my kids into a tiny little apartment. And then January 1st, we set out our first marketing. And by March, we had our first deal of $5,000. Went on to do 10 deals that first year, made a whopping $73,000. But, all went right back into the business, really. But what I realized was I could do this business. I built the foundation of something great here. I know I can repeat it. Now let's just get better. And then I went on a search to get better. But, yeah, that's basically how it all started, man. Just basically sold my house, moved my kids into a crappy little apartment, took $11,000 and said, I'm going to make this thing work. And I busted my ass, and we did.
But Jeremy, that's where you hit a lot of great points. And we're going to have to back up and unpack some of this because I agree with you on so many levels with this. Number one, your W-2 doesn't guarantee you security, right?
No.
Being an employee is never that guarantee. It's an illusion of safety. But I've seen so many people that they thought that their job was secure.
Yep.
And there was a company that I worked with where the owner, he would have these nice retirement parties for some of the people that had been with him for like 20 years or so. And he would just basically put them out to pasture. And he's like, yeah, they're going to go manage some of my non-company assets. I'm like, non-company assets? That's interesting because you're so proud of them. They do so well. They're so close to retirement with you that it's amazing, and he was just farming them out, putting them out to pasture, dude. And that's whenever I kind of realized like that loyalty. Some companies are fantastic to work for. I'm not going to take that away.
Yeah.
The majority of companies are not. You're being paid, and actually you're being bribed to give up your dreams to pursue somebody else's, and there's nothing wrong with that because there are times when, when my wife and I, we get the monthly insurance premiums in and all the costs of being self-employed. And we realize that it is like, it would be less costly to go work for somebody else. But then you start looking at the freedom that you get, and which we're going to get into REI freedom in just a minute, but you start realizing the trade-offs, right? So we'll take this perceived sense of, risk that we have by having businesses. versus the W-2. And again, that's just something that works for us. It works for you. To other people, I encourage them, regardless of if you love your job, find something to do part time that can generate income just to give you a bigger hedge against life and the things that can happen. And let's, if you don't mind, I'd like to hear more about how once you made this jump, and I'm sure that this happened to you just like it happened to us, that once you had success, then people started coming to you saying, "Well, Jeremy, how did you do this? How
Yeah.
did you do that? What did this look like?" And similar to just like me, you only have so many hours in a day, and a lot of that time is built on building your business versus having to, or not having, but being able to stop and share the knowledge. So then REI Freedom was born, which is the community that you've built to help people kind of break away from that, from being tied to a desk or anything like that. So would you share with us a little bit about REI Freedom?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. But real quick, before I get into that, I just want to circle back about the W-2 thing because I had a family member who celebrated his 40 years working with the same company. 40 years, blood, sweat,
40
and
years.
tears. Went to go to
Wow.
retire. They gave him a jacket and a watch. That's all he got out of it. And you know, there's not many places anymore where you can fully retire. It's hard to get a pension. You have to be a state or government place, or state or government, something along those lines to get a pension. It's really, really hard to find a job where you're going to work and retire anymore. So ask
Yeah.
yourself, what are you going to do for retirement? Like, what is your plan for retirement? Is a 401k going to be enough? Because even if you save $2 million in a 401k and you retire at 65, if you spend $100,000 a year, which is probably 20 years from now, which isn't going to be a lot of money the way inflation is going, $100,000 a year is only going to last you 20 years. So it means by the time you're 85, you're out of money, right? In a perfect world. So just keep that in mind. So,
Yeah. And with
so
the increase of medical, benefits and
all of it.
longevity of life, that's a very possible reality for people.
Dude, I plan on living like 100 plus, right? So I need a lot of money to do that. It's only going to get more expensive as time goes on, as we're seeing here. So,
Yeah.
401k isn't going to cut it.
No.
So yeah, but with REI Freedom, you're right. When you start having success, everybody's like, "Hey, let me take you out to lunch. Hey, let me buy you a coffee." Right? And what I realize is a lot of those people, no disrespect to those people, but a lot of them are tire kickers and they want to pick your brain and they won't take action. What I found early on was that a lot of people were just, taking my precious time, and I was nice and I wanted to give them the time, but nobody was ever doing anything with it. Then I realized like I only have so much time. I'm in this business to have more time, and I want to give people as much time as I can to help them, but I have to be respectful to my own dreams. I'm almost 50 years old. Like I'm running out of time. I can always make more money. I can't make more time. But really the why REI Freedom came to fruition was, you know, when I had my two sales guys, Dylan and Eddie, they were my acquisition guys, and they did over 100 deals in each of their markets, one in New York, one here in New Hampshire, Massachusetts. We got to a point where we really couldn't train them anymore. When I started my wholesaling process with Wholesaling Inc., the program was great to teach me how to wholesale a deal, but it didn't really teach me how to get better talking to sellers on the phone and in person. And it didn't tell me how to run it as a business. It didn't tell me any of that stuff. I had to go find coaches that could teach me that stuff. And I did.
Yeah.
Every coach I've had, I've actively went and looked for, including the coach I have today with Steve Richards. And then, as my guys started doing 100 deals, I trained them as far as I could. I put them in as much sales training as I could, but these guys were so good that there was no sales training to get them any better. And I'm a firm believer that if you're not continuing to grow and get better, you're dying, right? Either you're growing or dying. So I went on this journey, and it led me to Tom's younger brother, of all people, Dan Toback, who at this point had worked as an acquisition guy for Tom and his older brother Todd, for about 10 years in the Florida market, and did it like over 500 plus deals at this time when we started connecting together. So, there's a lot of companies like myself where we've done 450 plus deals, and there's other companies around that have done thousands of deals. but how many people have actually been in so many living rooms that they've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deals that they could personally coach somebody? There's very few that I could know of and could find. So, originally we're looking at John Martinez's program, which he, shortly after that ended up selling that. So we brought on Dan, and I started coaching my guys. I was paying them thousands of bucks a month to coach my guys, and they went crazy. I mean, in fact, Dylan in New York, he went from basically just under 45 deals in 1 year to 78 deals the next year under Dan. And then it just kind of like this, it resonated with me and Dan talking like, man, you have a really good sales skill ability of teaching and coaching. There's this need out there where not just teaching people how to wholesale, but how to turn it into a business, how to give people the sales training to get better at taking those leads, converting them to deals. And then let's not just stop at wholesaling. Let's teach people the exit strategies so they can maximize revenue out of this, right? So, give them all these different options so they can really build wealth once they master the art of acquiring off-market deals. So REI Freedom is really built off of mastering acquiring off-market deals, and then we want to teach you how to run a business and maximize revenue in the back end. So we started building this community, and there was really a need for it. And unfortunately for us, it continues to grow. So now I get to work with people who are taking action, who want, they pick my brain, but they literally take action on it. And we're changing people's lives just like that investor did for me back in 2008, 2009. And it's been an amazing journey, and I appreciate you allowing me to talk about it today.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I like, Jeremy, is that, for the wrong person, all the knowledge in the world isn't enough.
Right.
For the right person, you couldn't stop them. Right.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of people, myself included, whenever I first started getting into real estate and starting to go to some of the meetups, I looked around and I watched certain investors, and I've talked about this before, but whenever I was barely old enough, actually a little bit too young to even get into the bars, I would finish my job at night and I would go and I would, sit there. They'd cook a pizza for me. They'd let me in the bar and I'd shoot pool with these old pool hustlers, right?
That's
and
awesome.
I learned to just kind of watch how people move. And over the years, it served me very well. So in those circles, you go to these meetups and you watch these people, and that spirit of discernment kind of hits you with certain people, and you're like, oh no, I'm going to have to stay away from that. And I think that a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that all advice is good advice,
Right.
and it's where you really go in there and you say success leaves clues, and it really does. So just like I didn't have people jumping on board with me my first year in real estate, hell, my second year in real estate, I only had a handful of people really believing in us, saying that we can do it. And it was encouraging. It was probably, I'd say, later into that third year, I started teaching about how to buy rentals, because at this point, in 2 years, we were up 20 something rental properties.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, not bad considering that, like you, we started with like $6,000, right?
Dude, that's really, really good. That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 11's pretty impressive too. But I know a girl that started with $1,000, dude. And I'm telling you, I don't know what her portfolio is looking like now. But whenever I say she put in the work, that's why I'm saying, like, for the wrong people, you can give them every bit of knowledge and it'll never matter.
Yeah.
But for the right people, you couldn't stop, And that's where having a community like REI Freedom, like the Elite Investor community, that's what I feel like we are aligned with in those goals. So where, yes, we are here to help, and we want to share the knowledge with the right people, the people that will take that action, because, commodity or time is the only commodity that you cannot replenish. Like you said, you can always make more money.
Running out of time, but you can always make more money, right? So time is really the most valuable commodity. You're right. And, you're absolutely right. When I talk people a lot about who want to join our program, or we talk about to see if we're the right fit for them or if they're the right fit for us, and I say this a lot when I do my speaking events, is like, education is great, but action trumps education all day, every day. But if you can get the two of them where you're actually taking that education, learning, and then going out and applying action, massive imperfect action, by the way. I don't care how much education you're getting. It's still going to be imperfect because you're human and you have to, there's just so many variables that come into play that you have to just learn. But, this is why analysis paralysis is a thing, right? Because everybody's waiting for the perfect time, the perfect moment, wanting to make sure everything is perfect, but nothing will ever be perfect. So
No.
you have these people who go to these monthly meetups like the RIAs, and they end up being there 2, 3, 4 years, going every single month, learning about everything, but they never apply it to anything. So, I'd almost rather, so sometimes we have people come on, they'll be like, yeah, dude, I've been trying to, work on this, for 6 months and they haven't done anything but take action, but they're just failing at everything because they don't have any direction. But I have so much respect for somebody who's trying to do it. And then if I could just give them the direction now with that attitude of like, just tell me what to do, coach, and I'm going to go forward. Right. Which is how I am. Great things can happen. It's really, really fun to watch that.
Well, and especially whenever somebody's not an asshole. Right. So, and
that's a big part of it too.
Exactly. Well, and I say asshole, it's because those are the people that will come, they'll kick the tires, and then they disappear for another 6 months. And then they come back and they've done something, but they didn't listen. And now they're asking the next question. How do I fix what I got into? It's like you don't just get to come back every 6 months once you've made a new mess of things. So how do we work with that? Well, Jeremy, if you don't mind, I've got a few questions that I've kind of prepped because while I've got you on here, I want to take advantage of it, and I want to hear from you on your insights. So this is going to come down to like just the market cycles and adaptability. We both know that any given market can be cyclical, can be unpredictable. How do you go about advising investors to adapt like strategies when the rates climb and when market inventory tightens and when the consumer behavior shifts? What would you say to your group, your community, when they're asking you what to do in those situations?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, the last year or two have probably been, the worst market cycle we've experienced since the Great Depression, right? You're talking 15 years. And this is the first, market that's been a challenge. And, nationally, it's a little bit of a challenge. Some areas, on a local level are doing great. Some levels are really struggling. But, the market is always going to be cyclical. It always has been. And, you can wait for it to be the perfect time to come in, but there's pros and cons to that, right? Or the worst time, right? So even in, 2018, 2019, everybody was afraid to come in because the collapse was coming. And then in 2020, it was a great time to come in. But guess what? You could list your house with, 9,000 other people, and there was a bidding war, and there's realtors, like there was tons of competition everywhere. So there's always pros and cons. But what I would tell anybody doing it is, you need to, first, in my opinion, again, I'm a little bit biased from my experience, master the art of acquiring off-market properties because distress is everywhere, right? Now, there's going to be some people that are motivated by money and you're not the right fit for them. They should be listing with an agent. But there's foreclosure all the time. There is tax delinquency all the time. There is people inheriting houses that they don't want. There's deferred maintenance. There's people losing their job, inquiring tenants that they don't want. They become bad landlords, right? There's all these reasons for distress. And it's like a conveyor belt. That no matter how many houses you buy, there's more houses that come down this conveyor belt that are distressed that need people like us that just aren't going to be a fit for a lot of people outside of the investing community. So there's always opportunity. Even in a low inventory market we are like right now, even with more competition now than ever, there's still plenty of opportunity for everybody. So figure out how to acquire off-market deals because I'm sorry, guys, buying them off the MLS is not a repeatable, predictable business model where you're going to consistently get good off-market deals unless you want to just overspend and outbid everybody else, and that's not going to lead, right? We need to buy right? Buy low, sell high. That's the goal here, right? And we have to buy right, and overpaying on the MLS isn't the way to go do it. So that's the first thing. And then, I think having flexibility in your business model as far as what you're going to do with the properties is important. For my business model, because we have been able to acquire off-market properties, decided out as a wholesaler, we do flip, we do wholesale, we do novations, occasionally do some creative financing. and we buy rentals as well. If you're just a flipper, right, and you have 7 flips going, all your business model and all your money is tied up into flipping, and then all of a sudden you have the fastest rate increase hike in history happening in a calendar year, and the market just freezes. I saw a lot of people that almost went out of business in 2022 into 2023 because nobody was buying their houses. In some of these markets, they were, now having to lower those prices, and they couldn't do that because they now decided to bring money to the table, and they were fire selling them just to get their money back out of these properties, right? Me in 2022, was it 2022? I don't know. They're all blended. No, 2023. Sorry, 2023. We only flipped one house all year. I went from not having to flip or not wanting to flip to just wholesaling and wholetailing and in changing our business model. So I feel like having some flexibility there allows you to do different things. So if the market rates drop and, the right now we're in a buyer's market here from what I see, but if it becomes a little bit more of a seller's market, I can easily start turning these into flips again. But for right now, I wholesale and I wholetail them. And that seems to be the business model. I am flipping some houses, but in 2023, man, in 2022, we got out of all our flips. And I'm like, until I figure out what's going on, I'm not flipping anything else. But I had that flexibility. A lot of people don't. And that's scary. And, and one more thing, if you're buying rentals, which I love buying rentals, that is a long game. Right. And, and you could be in a situation, if that's all you're doing, you may not cash flow for a couple of years if the economy tanks in a certain way. So you need to make sure that you can bring in some income to weather that storm long term. Rentals always pay long term, but short term, there could be times when they don't pay at all.
Brother, I'm right there with you. And I think that you made some great points, and we're going to go back and we're going to unpack those too. So if all you have is a hammer, then everything to you is a nail. Right. And that's where people don't understand that you need to have different exit strategies for any property that you can go into. And a lot of people, you're right, they kind of got sideways when rates hit about 5.25. That's when people started saying, "Oh no, I'm going to slow down. I'm not going to rush in and look right now. We're going to wait and see and let the market correct. We're going to get back down into the 4s." What happened?
Yeah, it went to 7.
Yeah, exactly. So we're just sitting here like, all right, well, when are you going to buy a house now, bud? And this is one of the challenges that I think a lot of people are starting to have is that, now with the interest rates holding so strong that even the builders, they can't move their inventory like they would like to move the inventory. So now they're kind of in this race to the bottom where they're offering just insane concessions. And that is making it for resellers, people that have an existing property to sell, makes it really tough on them to compete because now, for example, there's a rather large builder around here. They're offering it's $30,000 in concessions, $20,000 towards closing, hurricane door and window updates, and a 5% mortgage rate if you use their company. Right. So tell me, how would a retail seller or just a regular person go to sell their house against a builder that's still building in that subdivision or within a mile?
Yeah,
right.
You can't.
Exactly. So now the only thing that, again, and this is where like you watching these, these trends and saying, okay, will tariffs be an issue? Will that do anything? All right. So it does run the risk. These tariffs can increase the building materials, which might increase the builder's cost to build and level the playing field somewhat for a retail seller. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. But I think investors, they think too hyper local. They don't really zoom out and say, all right, this is what we're starting to see nationwide sometimes. And it really will be beneficial if you learn to love and nerd out on some of the influences that will have that ripple effect into your market. So, for example, with any of ours, we're coming up on our second 5-year cycle, which is 10 years in the business. We bought our first property in 2015. And, 5 years later, most of these loans are on 5-year balloons. Yep. So we're actually working through one right now, going through our second cycle on it and doing a really nice refinance. Here's one of the interesting things. When we refinanced initially back in 2020, we took it was like $1.2 million in property value. We financed $800,000. Over the past 5 years, we've got that down to like $230,000. And that was through taking advantage of flipping, putting it out there on the market, or taking profit from flips, doing a payment down on the balloon that way, or on the principal, so we could get that note down. And as we're going through, we were at 4% interest on this, Jeremy, whenever
Yeah,
we financed in 2020. We're going, and we just got quoted at 7.25. I was anticipating 8. At 8% interest, whenever we refinanced, we were able to, to do a couple things with it. And we're going to save $1,300 a year, double the interest that we're paying, by being aggressive on the pay down. And, just really, it's not a problem to take out money and to be, to take risk, but you just don't want to be reckless. And I think that in this market, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people, they would rather sit on the sidelines than do a simple reverse engineer of the numbers to say, all right, well, I know my debt service is going to cost me X. So the repairs are going to be Y. Then my offer has to be Z. And yes, it might not be within 10% of what somebody's asking for their list price. But if you present the numbers, you would be amazed at how often the sellers can't argue with the math. They're just like, yeah, it sucks. And then they decide if they can or can't take it. It's going to be up on their motivation. But I love to have those transparent conversations with people. And it's a simple reverse engineer process to get to my offer. And if you don't mind, I'd like to dive into that part, because you focus, your primary focus is looking for investment properties off market. So you're going direct to seller, right? So looking for those motivated sellers. Is there any, well, without giving away the secret sauce, what would you encourage people to do, to look for, to find those things?
Well, so I'm happy to give it all the secret sauce away for free. So not to worry about there. But honestly, when it comes to off-market deals, we don't make it about the numbers. So we make it about the value. So, when it's on market, it's a little bit of a different story when you reverse engineer. But when you're working with somebody who's distressed looking to sell their house, if you think of like Charlie Brown's teacher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they hear when you say, well, you need a roof and this is what it needs. They don't care about any of that, right? If you make it about the numbers in our industry, working direct off market with sellers, you're basically drawing a line in the sand and creating a negotiation battle where nobody wants to lose. Who's going to cross the line in the sand? So instead, we make it all about, are we the right fit for you? We're coming from a place of empathy. We're here to solve your problems. We're going to bring you as much value. We're going to ask you a bunch of questions. We're going to deep dive into your situation, and we're going to provide a ton of value for you in exchange for monetary value, right? Would that be you leaving the 500 tires in your backyard in there rather than, selling it and getting it clean, right? Is it a situation where you may need help relocating and you may need some funds up front to do that? Do you want me to take this property with the non-paying tenants in place, right? This place doesn't qualify for conventional financing because the roof is caving in, right? There's all these scenarios where we could provide a lot of value in exchange. So obviously we have to come to a number that makes sense for both parties. But what we're really doing is giving them much more value on the buy side, so we can still get it at a good price, and we give them a price that's good enough, and provide them value. We're working on this. We just closed on this house up here in New Hampshire, and this is just kind of value we're talking about, right? So this person, like most people in our industry, they kick the can down the road as far as they can, and they call us a week before the auction. Hey, my auction is in 7 days. I need to do something. I don't want to lose my house, right? Could have called us a month ago, 2 months ago, but no, let's wait till the 7 days. So make a long story short, the people don't want to lose their house. They missed they were late on a few payments, but they really feel like they could qualify. They have a ton of equity. So we came up with the idea of, hey, why don't you keep your house? And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to buy your house and we're going to sell it back to you, and we're going to make a profit. But we'll prevent you from losing your house. You don't have to leave. You've been here for 30 years. And, we're going to give you an X amount of time to qualify. And if you qualify and you get your house back, we make money. You keep your house. It's a win-win. If you don't, then, after a certain amount of time, you're going to have to leave. We'll flip the house and we're going to do a profit share on the back end. So, there's all these different ways that we can provide value than just reverse engineering numbers. So that's kind of how we do it in our industry, direct to seller. I hope I explained that well.
No, so you did. And that's one of the things that it recalls, or I recall this scenario that came to us, I think it was probably back in July, August last year, where the seller was about to lose their house to foreclosure. And I started really kind of getting into it and seeing where it was at. And an attorney, now, again, different states have different processes. But the attorney that I spoke with, he said, run from that deal as far as possible. And I didn't do all of my due diligence on this. So I kind of stopped whenever I heard it because I had other opportunities anyway. And I was looking for low hanging fruit. But essentially, he said that number one, going in and doing a deal where the owner gets to stay in place runs the risk of, if they default, getting them out, getting the eviction granted could be really difficult. And that's why, I've always, even the sub two stuff, I respect the strategy. I've never dove into it. I've always had a curiosity, but I've never dove into it for that fear of, trying to learn what happens under a couple situations. For example, under sub two is, what happens if the seller dies? And what happens if the seller declares bankruptcy? And there's a really large community, a very particular community that focuses on that. I've asked that question a number of times, and nobody has been able to answer that for me.
Yeah,
So
sub twos are a tool in our tool belt, but we use them for short term
yeah,
bridges,
so
not
very
long
short term
term.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we bought a few properties like that until we can stabilize and maybe bring some value to keep our costs down as far as borrowing money and stuff like that, and then we refinance them out. Yeah, I mean, I hear your situation about attorney saying stay away from that deal, and I hear ka-ching, 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 right?
yeah,
Because that is the opportunity where you can get it really low
yeah,
because of that type of situation. So we do a lot of business in Mass. Mass is a very blue state, and they are very tenant friendly. We had a situation literally a year ago. I saw it show up in my history today. A year ago, last February, we closed on this deal. I got this deal in a contract. We closed on it in March. Basically, it was an inherited house where these two senior older brothers lived, owned it from their mom. The brother who didn't live there had it in his name. The brother who did live there, who was basically milking the system for like the last 50 years, was living there and didn't want to leave, along with his 40-year-old son, who was milking the system. Basically, two deadbeats, two generations of deadbeats. And he was living in the house, and we were going to buy it, but we wanted to go check it out because we were going to buy it and flip it. We said, yeah, we'll buy it. We'll take them in place. We'll do cash for keys because we do this all the time. Go
yeah.
down there. The son starts swearing and threatening us. And the brother who owns the house, he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I can't get you in. My guy, sales guy, negotiates another $40,000 reduction on the spot like this, because now we're buying it sight unseen. And he's like, I just want to be done with this. I don't want to evict my brother. I don't want to get in this fighting war. I just want this house sold. I need the money. So we buy this house literally for $260,000. Okay. I have to now go and do cash for keys. They basically give me the big middle finger, say, no way, we're not doing it. Take us to court. So we go to court, go through the eviction process. It takes 9 months to get it evicted. All right. 9 months to get them out. And when it's all said and done, we have to pay for moving costs. We have to find them a storage unit to put all the pays. We have to pay for all the stuff.
Court ordered?
Court ordered. All right. So we don't get control of this property now until October. I bought it in February. Okay. We sell it. We put it on the market, sell it to a cash buyer. We closed on it. Our net profit on this deal was $206,000. I didn't do one thing except for clean this property out. No maintenance, no hammer, no flip. I sold it to a flipper. I just had to wait 9 months to get, control of the property.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't use my own money. I used a private lender's money. They paid 100% of everything. So my lender made money. I didn't have to pay anything. I just had to deal with the headaches and weather the storm, right?
Yeah.
So that deal doesn't come unless I know that I'm taking it and dealing with this 9 month. I was hoping 6, but 9 months, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, Lee, would you buy a house for 30 cents on the dollar, 25 cents on the dollar, wait out 9 months to make $200K? I think
every
the answer
single day because you've already allowed for that expense. You've already
Mhm.
allowed for those holding costs.
Mhm.
So, and that's what I was stating earlier. If you can reverse engineer and you expect that to happen, then you already know that you'll still be in the black when it's over with, right?
Correct.
So yeah, but 9 months, man, for well, I've heard
Yeah.
horror stories about New York. I
Yeah, New
mean,
York,
years.
Massachusetts, it's the worst. But you have to
Oh,
go into it knowing that it's not the only deal we have. It's one of many, right? That was one of 30
yeah,
deals in that market we closed last year, but it was worth the wait. So when I hear your situation about the lawyer saying run, I'm like, I'm running towards it, not away from
yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, and good for you on that because
Yeah,
that's where I explain to other people. It's like, look, just because I might pass on a deal doesn't make it a bad deal.
right,
It is not in my current buy box. Is the only reason that I pass
100%.
on, right?
And most
Um,
people do, and
yeah,
that's why they want to buy from wholesalers or buy in the market because they don't want to deal with that stuff, and that's
yeah.
totally fine.
Yeah. Well, and I had a guy, he actually called me. He was in San Francisco. He called for a consultation one time. And we were going over this, and I had to explain to him the concept of cash for keys because he had a tenant. And this was right there when the lockdown happened and nobody had to pay. And this person already hadn't paid for like 5 months. And my question to him is, why did you let it go for 5 months
Yeah,
before you decided now's the time to take action?
yeah,
And I don't understand that part because our first year in business, I almost nice got us right back out of business.
yeah.
Because I came in, and of course, coming from a lower, or maybe a upper lower class family, not a lower middle class. Either way, we were poor,
Yeah,
and
I
with
get it.
that, I understood the struggle of
Yeah,
what people had to go through and what that felt like, right? So I didn't want to be the mean, give me my money landlord. I
yeah,
wanted to be compassionate. And then I realized, like, oh shit, they're taking advantage of this. And
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah, you can't have five grandmothers die in 2 months.
No.
Sorry. It's
This is why
just,
I have a property
maybe,
management company because they take advantage of me because of my kindness, right?
yeah,
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. My flooring guy used to say this thing, and again, I apologize for interrupting.
you're fine.
It's one thing to be kind, but we're not Santa Claus, right? So if people will take advantage of us all the time.
Oh yeah, and that's where I ended up swinging completely to the other direction with that, and became almost militant. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, it's the 5th of the month. There's your notice. We done. You can pay
yeah,
for the filing fees and everything else, and
yeah.
we'll be back to good. But I'm not waiting.
No,
And then my turnover became extremely high, and then I had to find that middle of the road, right,
yeah,
to get there. So we did get a question from Michael Jones, and this is I'll give you a little background on Michael Jones. He's actually been an investor for a few years now, and he's looking to grow and transition into full time real estate from his W 2. So he's taking a lot of that action. And I appreciate you, Michael, for getting on here and watching this tonight. But he's asking, how important was having a program or a platform to follow in the beginning critical to your success today? Well, you've already shared with us that you started with that company back in, I think you said 06, 07. So if you
2000,
don't mind,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
2016. So I knew what wholesaling was, and I was like what I hear a lot of people today. I know what wholesaling is. I know what to do, right? Of course, YouTube wasn't as big with that stuff as it is today, but I knew what it was. But when I went into the coaching program, I remember going through it and being like, "Wow, there's so much more to this." Like the actionable logistical steps that you have to do day in and day out that I had no idea. Like you don't know what you don't know. And I just
yeah,
remember going through like, wow, I'm so glad I'm in this because this is so much more to this than I thought. And what would have taken me 3 months, which took me 3 months to get my first deal in that first coaching program because it gave me actionable steps. I remember during that time thinking, man, this would have taken me 6, 7 months to figure this stuff out on my own, right?
yeah,
So it shortcut my success, and I learned how to do my first deal in 90 days. And then I just kind of rinsed and repeated it. And then to fast track even more, I said, all right, I did 10 deals my first year. I need to get better at talking to people. I found a coach that taught me how to get, and I was coming from a sales background. I said, I still need to get better. Then I found a coach to teach me how to do sales. I went from 10 deals to 24. And then we went
yeah,
from 24 to 36. The next thing you know, we're doing 80 to 100 deals a year, and we're doing well into the $1 million. But that was because I went from one coach, learned what I needed to do, immediately hired another coach. I have not been without a coach, no jokely, since I've started this journey back in late 2016, as of today, 8+ years, I've not been one day without a coach.
And if I'm not mistaken, you strike me as the kind of guy that has different coaches for different things. Like you said, you wanted to get better at speaking with people, but
Mhm.
also you're what, 48? Is it
Mhm.
47? Okay. So, and probably I would say probably the top 5% of like physical fitness of US citizens, right? So with that being
Thank
said, do you have a nutrition coach? And let's
I
talk
do.
about like what that, see, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does your I guess your day look like as far as like your personal habits, your daily routines, your productivity? What would you say kind of starts your day, and as your day progresses, what's that look like, and what's your typical wind down kind of time of the day, and what's that all look like?
Well, I'd be in bed right now if it wasn't for this, but no, it's a great question. I've always been kind of an early riser, and I've been training for something most of my adult life. When I found the gym late in my teens, it was, my first step into personal development, where I found that if I put in consistent hard work every day, it starts to yield some results. So kind of laid the groundwork for what was to come for the next few decades at this point. Geez, I'm old. Then 2019, I read The Miracle Morning, and that was one of those pivotal books that really showed me that, hey, you're getting up early, but are you really being productive when you first wake up? So that kind of transitioned me into having a more productive morning. So how it looks today is, I get up, we get up early, even if we don't have to, outside of getting the kids ready for school, my wife and I, we don't need an alarm. We have nowhere to go. I can get up at any time, any day I want. I've been like that for years, which is it's a blessing, right? I don't have to get up and rush into rush hour traffic to get into work or anything like that. I could literally sleep all day if I wanted to, but I could never do that because I want to go make money and do things. So we get up, I make my wife coffee, we sit on the couch, we talk for a little bit, and then we do some reading in the morning. I like to do my personal development as far as the reading goes. I'm always reading business books or personal development books or real estate books or money books, investing books. I'm always just trying to learn first thing in the morning before anything happens. And then from there, we go and do our exercises. We'll hit the gym or do yoga or go for walks or both. And then we come home, we have breakfast, we'll shower. Typically, we don't even start our day until like 10 o'clock with meetings and stuff. I'll be answering some voicemails or emails and stuff like that. And then some days, like Mondays and Tuesdays are kind of dating days. So like today we went out and had facials and went and had breakfast after the gym. Tomorrow we have a few things because we're headed to LA for a speaking event, but typically Tuesdays is the day we may bounce around at some houses and do some content and go out to lunch. And then Wednesdays and Thursdays, I kind of have my team meetings because, it's focused kind of around the kids' schedules. But then 4 or 5 o'clock, the day kind of comes to an end. Some days it's earlier, sometimes it's like 3. And I'll do some coaching stuff or I'll do some content stuff if I feel motivated and I have it. Other than that, we just spend time with the family and then, watch a little TV before bed. And then usually we just kind of go to bed early. We don't like watch a lot of TV at night to stay up late because we would rather get up early. Most days we're up at 4 or 5 in the morning. If we sleep to 6, it's sleeping in. And we just like to get a great start to the day.
I love so many parts of that, mainly because I can identify. Now, I'm sure you'll agree with this part too. It hasn't always been that way for you.
No.
Just like it hasn't always been that way for us. So today we just felt like going to the beach. I had some business calls in the morning and I took care of that. Now, I could go to the gym more. Obviously, you can see this physique here that is like built by carbs and self-hate. But all that to say, I'm learning to love myself. So I'm
There's a
working.
lot to love, Lee. Come on, man. There's a lot to love.
So, but all that to say, we love to be able to go over there, and when everybody else is going to their morning commute, my wife gets to go in there, and her morning commute is going to the coffee pot and pressing start on the machine, because I have this thing where I prep the K-Pod for her. I got a cup right there, and I'm on my second cup. I'm over here doing my stuff, and she'll go in there and she'll open up her devotional and she'll, read her Bible app and she'll do her thing and casually get her day started. Right.
Yeah.
So by 9 o'clock, we're walking the dogs. She goes for her walk. We hop on the bikes. And, I'm still working intermittently through that time. Used to, yeah, I'd wake up at 5 and then I'd close down shop around 9 or 10 at night. But now it's when we choose to put in the work.
Yeah.
Even after 12 today. Now we didn't go get facials, but we are due for a spa day soon. We decided that we were just going to go to the beach because
Yeah.
it's Monday afternoon.
Yeah. And
And
who's at the beach, right? And
yeah,
I love that. First of all, my wife and I love doing Mondays and Tuesdays because everybody does Saturday. What we do on Monday, Tuesdays, everybody does on Saturday and Sundays. And I don't want to be stuck in that crowd with everybody else, right? Everybody's
yes,
going back to work Monday and Tuesdays, and I'm doing what they want to do on the weekend. I'm still off on the weekend. I just don't want to be dealing with all of them on the weekend. And
yeah,
you and your wife have built a life of freedom. Of course, you had to
yeah,
bust your ass to get to this point, but how
yes,
amazing is it that, hey, I don't have to ask anybody to go to the beach today. We're just going to the beach. What
yeah.
an
I can take
amazing
those calls. Yeah,
freedom.
yeah.
I love it.
And people they think that freedom looks like Lambos and jets. And if that's your version of freedom, then by all means go pursue
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Mine is just the ability to go in and like whenever we get off of here, my hot tub is right back there. It's been heating up, so I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna soak
Yeah.
my knee for a little while, and I'm gonna go and just relax for the rest of the evening. And I'll go to
Love
bed
it.
and I'll wake up at 5, do it again. But it's
Love it.
because I choose to,
Yeah.
And I think that that's ultimately what people need to get out of real estate investing. It's not about the flash. It's not about being able to walk into a room and say,
It's a
I've got this
lifestyle.
portfolio. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
But what can I do with the freedom that it gives me?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're planning. We'll see how this goes. Like a month and a half trip, in Asia and Europe.
Yeah.
And the goal is to just go over there and be able to disconnect. Now, similar to what you're doing, you have a team of people that you can trust when you go to do that. So we're working on identifying that. Also, we're stepping up in our investment. Uh, our single families, small multifamilies, they've been great. But I'm sure you've seen this too. It's time to get ready for some multifamily acquisitions, some larger plays. And I've always held that maxim to where, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. And now I've had the mindset shift that if you want to go far, or I'm sorry, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So now I'm bringing people in so that we can start acquiring larger multifamilies and let everybody sit at the table
Yep.
so long as they earn and keep their spot.
Yep.
And that's, I've got to say that I love what you're doing with REI Freedom. And I love how you're building a life for your family, but also you're inspiring your children to see that they don't have to go and, work 40 hours a week or more for 40 years at a job and get 40 minutes on the tail end of their life to say, I'm able to retire, you
Yeah.
know? So, congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
just as we get ready to kind of wind it down, because I want you to get to bed, get your beauty rest, that
I
way you
need
can
all
wake
the
up.
beauty rest I could get. This thing. Have you seen my face today? I got a black eye this morning.
Oh man, see, you need to listen the first time she tells you. I'm telling
I
you.
know. You think I would learn after all these years, right?
Well, some of us were just slow learners.
Yeah.
I've gotten really good at applying foundation to mine. So, but
Love it.
all that to say, like, if you could compress everything that you've learned into like one principle for real estate investing and just being successful, what would you say that is?
Well, I always tell people it's three things, but it's really just taking massive imperfect action. That's really the key to my success, almost to a fault. I just do, I'm always just going to do, but I always tell three things, you always got to be learning, always got to be marketing, always got to be taking action. If you can apply all three of those things, you're going to be doing great. But action is more important than anything and everything, in my opinion. Just do it. Don't, just like the Nike commercial, just do it. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be afraid. You're going to have sleepless nights. I don't care how successful you are. None of that stuff goes away. It's always
Yeah,
going to be there. We still have them today. But,
yeah,
we've been able to build a life that works for us, right? We've built a life. I call it lifestyle investing, right? We've built our lifestyles the way we want them. I love working, and I still, no matter if I had enough money to not work the rest of my life, I still would anyway because I enjoy it. And obviously, I'm
with a
not at that
purpose.
point. But I
Yeah,
have enough money and built a business where I get to just do whatever the hell I want when I want with the great people that I want to spend time with. That is rich to me. that is wealth to me. I don't care about the jets. I don't care about all that stuff. I just want more
Yeah.
time with my family and my beautiful wife and doing the things that I enjoy. That's true wealth to me, because as you keep saying, time is limited, man. The older we're getting, the more of it's slipping away. I want to make sure that I'm enjoying it for myself and not for somebody else.
That's right. And just to kind of anchor into that, they say that time on task will beat talent every time,
Agreed.
and then secondly, it is more convenient to cry on a Benz than on a bicycle. So put in your work, and get where you feel you need to be with your life so that you're comfortable. And I guess the last thing to tell you, Jeremy, is whenever you get tired of being up there in the snow and shoveling and all this, and you decide that
Oh,
you need a
I'm
break.
already there, Lee.
I was going to say, you and your wife, y'all come on down. We'll get you set up in the guest room for a couple nights.
Love
Won't
it.
even charge you rent, but just y'all come on
That's
down
nice
and
of
enjoy
you.
some of the sun down here.
Yeah, no, we're anxious. Our youngest is a freshman in high school. We have 5 kids between us. 3 of them are already out of the house. One's graduating high school this year, and she's off to Virginia. So she'll be going to college down there. And then once our youngest graduates high school, we plan on being. We're moving down south, but we're really actually going to be nomads. Kind of what you're talking about with your wife in Europe. We're going to basically probably spend a couple years bouncing around the country and Europe, going from Airbnb to Airbnb, all while running my business, by the way, from afar.
That's right.
And we'll just kind of check out Spain for a while, check out Greece. We want to do all this until our kids start having kids, and then we want to be a little bit more local. But then the goal after that is we're going to be snowbirds. We're going to have a place up in Cape Cod, and we're going to have a place down in Florida, and we're going to kind of bounce back and forth and be great grandparents.
Then you get the RV, and then you go and you stop for a couple nights or a week there, and then you go to the next kid and see the next grandkid.
100%. And I'm going to still be buying and selling houses because that's what I love to do.
Brother, that's freedom, right?
That is freedom.
So anybody that is interested in learning more about Jeremy's community that he's built up, down here at the bottom of the scroll or at the banner, it's been scrolling since we got started, but it's reifreedom.com.
Awesome.
And, connect with Jeremy on social media. And in the meantime, Jeremy, thank you again for coming on tonight. If there's anything that I can ever help you with, just reach out.
Ditto, man. My pleasure. I really appreciate this. It was a lot of fun talking with you as always, and I hope we get a chance to do it again.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.